Welcome everyone to Buddha's Center. My name is Jeff Allen. Tonight, once again, we're discussing Bodhicitta, the awakening mind, using Panchen Sonandrapa's General Meaning of Perfection, which is the textbook that Drepung Losar Ling uses. One of the textbooks that Drepung Losar Ling uses when they're going over Prajnaparamita during the Geshe curriculum. And this is the general meaning, and then they have specific meaning of perfection. And then there's some, other texts that they use as well. But this is, the general meaning of the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras. And it has this beautiful section on in the awakening mind in Bodhicitta. It shows us wonderfully how we could have just immeasurable love and compassion for every sentient being that abides in the universe. So it shows us how to generate that. And it shows us how by generating that, we're actually able to achieve bliss ourselves by generating this ultimate love, this immense love and compassion for everyone without exception. It shows us how it brings us to a state of bliss. And we understand then how, based on that, based on the conventional and ultimate bodhicitta, we're able to achieve the two bodies of the Buddha, the form body and the truth bodies. So we see how important it is, and that this bodhicitta is the only entrance into the Mahayana path, and the Mahayana path is the only thing that will allow us to become a Buddha. So it's indispensable, and we're so fortunate to be able to have these clear commentaries, and have had Khentsur Geshe Wandak to explain it to us multiple times, using this commentary embedded within the Lamrim Chemo, and then embedded in also just straight bodhicitta teachings that Rinpoche gave. And then whenever he would give teachings on shorter Lamrim teachings, he would always use this text kind of as a framework, because it allows you to navigate bodhicitta very, very easily without missing anything whatsoever. So you can be clear and sure that if you have the stages that lead up to bodhicitta, that you can get bodhicitta by relying on what's in that text. And the commentaries that we were given. So what amazing opportunity we have. We have the recipe in front of us that will allow us to learn, how to get bodhicitta. And then bodhicitta will be what drives us to Buddhahood when we mix with wisdom. And without the bodhicitta, if we only had the wisdom, we would only be able to achieve an abiding nirvana like a Hinayana foe destroyer. But even that state isn't complete because the Hinayana foe destroyer hasn't completed their own aims, let alone everyone else's aims, because their own aims haven't been completed because they still have obstructions to omniscience. They still have cognitive obstructions, which impede them from having great bliss, which impede them from being able to help and be reliable to all sentient beings. So we are not practicing a Dharma like that. We're not engaging in a recipe like that. We're engaging in a recipe that when we cook it, it turns into bodhicitta. And it's very important that we understand that these studies are so important, and putting together the understanding is so important, because if we don't, like Geshe Dorje Damdu said, if we don't have any good cook knows that you gather your ingredients, right? You gather the recipe, you follow the recipe, and then eventually, you start cooking and you don't really look at the recipe any longer. And that's what the wisdom arisen from meditation is. It's that you don't have to look at the recipe any longer because you're cooking, you're engaging in this familiarization that's so embedded within your mind that you've heard and analyzed, and that now you can just apply it into your life and into your practice without any, kind of need to bring it back to your mind or to, use a lot of reason and analysis to get it right to the forefront, because it'll be at the forefront and you'll be able to engage in that, familiarization again and again and again with it, as if you had, had this wonderful meal that you had planned, and then you decided, okay, I have this list of ingredients. I get all the ingredients, and Geshe Dorje Damdu said that's like the wisdom arisen from hearing. And then you get the ingredients together and you look at the recipe, and you're checking in the recipe and looking at all the details and checking it to make sure you heard. You know it well enough to cook it, right? So you have this recipe that you've heard, and then you check it and you look at the recipe and make sure you know how to cook it. And then once you've gotten really, really, adept in that recipe, the recipe is not necessary, and then you can just cook. So it's like that. When we look at how this affects our lives, how this Dharma practice will affect us and how it will transform us into Buddhas, it doesn't do it overnight. It does it in a very gradual fashion through various stages of practice that are needed to be done one by one in order to succeed. And the success is becoming a Buddha. And we have the recipe, we have all of the ingredients, we all have all the right teachings that will bring us to that. So with that being said, let's get into a posture that will allow us to be intentional, allow us to get into a clear state of mind. That 7-point Vairocana posture we talk over and over again about. We see it right in the beginning of the Lamrim Chemo as, a preparation within the 6 preparations when it talks about, getting into a straight posture. And we find in the commentaries that the 7-point Vairocana posture is such posture that's usually mentioned during that point. And we find in Kamalashila's medium stages of meditation, a posture that's very, very, very similar. And then in the Lamrim Chemo, this very, very similar posture later on, where it gets into it and it quotes the stages of meditation. So you see almost everything in this posture except the hand gesture, I believe. Check the commentary on that in the medium stages of meditation. So anyway, we get into this 7-point Vairocana posture. It's important when you start to do something, there's an origin for it. That it can be backed up by authentic texts, authentic treatises, Tibetan commentaries, Indian commentaries, sutra. It should be able to trace back to the sutra. You should be able to see how these teachings are concordant with what the Buddha taught. This shouldn't be something that I just made up here tonight. This should be something that's in an unbroken lineage all the way back to the Buddha, because that's how we can be sure it'll work. If it's something that we just make up, we make up a lot of things that don't work, right? So it's important, even though maybe it sounds reasonable, or we do this adjustment because we think, oh, well, wouldn't that work better if we did it that way? Sometimes we need to kind of shut off our mind and shut off our good ideas, because there's a lot better ideas than the ones we've had, because our ideas have brought us into a state of suffering since beginningless time, over and over and over and over and over again. And the Buddha's ideas have allowed him or her to achieve a state of freedom from suffering and complete bliss. So we might want to open our ears and listen to the advice of a being who has transcended the things that we hate so much and how they did it. We get into that posture that's suggested, the 7-point Vairocana posture. We put our legs preferably into the Vajra posture. If we can't, half lotus or half Vajra, or just cross-legged or feet on the ground, whatever we can do within our physical capacity. We put our hands on our lap with our right thumb touching our right hand on top of our left hand, resting comfortably in our lap. Back straight like a stack of coins, shoulders in a comfortable position, head slightly forward, eyes slightly open, 45 degrees, looking at the nose, and then the tongue on the top of the roof of the mouth against the teeth. Mouth in a comfortable position. And then we add an 8th point, which is breathing in and out of our nose. So when we breathe in and out of our nose, we do it very comfortably and relaxed. We don't try and force it. We don't try and do it very, very strong or very, very slow. We're just trying to do complete breaths. If we can bring it all the way in, if you can bring it even into your diaphragm, breathing in that way to get it to the most complete deep breath you can. Almost like when you inhale, when you're breathing through the diaphragm, you see the stomach go out when you inhale. And then as you exhale, the stomach goes in. So you can get in almost a deeper breath when you do it like that, or whatever is comfortable for you. This is just a suggestion that may be helpful for you. So we're in this posture, we're breathing in and out. So begin to breathe in and out, breathing through your nose. All the way to the full inhalation of your breath. I call it the top of the breath, but just the full inhalation. And then, right when you get to the top of that breath, gently exhale and count as you do that. So you're breathing in, breathing out, 1, breathing in, breathing out, 2. So we're going to follow that pattern for a few moments, just kind of get comfortable with it. What we're trying to do is we're trying to shut off any excitement or any, thing that's coming into our mind that's distracting us from being able to think about virtuous things. We come here with a lot of attachment and a lot of anger and a lot of situations in our life and a lot of stories that we make in our mind and turn into sometimes mini series about the things that we're attached to and want so badly and the people we dislike and why they're so bad. And then we continue it, we stop maybe to eat something, and then we're like, get back on the subject and think about it again. And our minds work like that in a very distracted fashion. So what we're trying to do now is focus on the breath, bring it to a place that's not as distracted, bring it to a place that's neutral, and then be able to build virtue on top of that. So we're going to begin, just for everyone to know what's going to happen, we're going to begin building the virtue by first focusing on Buddha Shakyamuni, and then we'll do a kind of small guided meditation to set our motivation before we start our prayers. So let's first begin by focusing on the breath for a few rounds, and then we'll add, you can add as soon as you're ready, the image of Buddha Shakyamuni, but I'll mention it just in case it leaves your mind, to add that image of Buddha Shakyamuni, and then we'll stay together in that moment of breathing with Buddha Shakyamuni as the object of observation, about 2 feet in front of us, about 2 inches tall, maybe a thumb height, with all radiance and glory, the most beautiful, beautiful being you've ever seen, and not a normal being in terms of, it's a 3-dimensional alive being, but Buddha Shakyamuni in this case is a radiant being, a light being, no blood, guts, or any of those kinds of organs that would normally be in a normal body. It's a light body, a diamond body of purity that Buddha Shakyamuni has. So imagine that very, very bright and luminous as you're doing the visualization. So let's get into that posture as best we can, and let's focus on the breath, and then we'll add Buddha Shakyamuni as our object of observation for the front generation. Visualizing Buddha Shakyamuni in the space in front of us and focusing on the breath. Begin thinking about the various types of suffering that you've experienced and will have to experience. Think about the reason you started to seek out spiritual answers. Think about the various forms of suffering that made you so sad. Think about the suffering of birth. You come out of the womb suffocating, so scared and crying, uncertain of what everything is. Suffering of aging. Youth goes by so quickly. "20 years turns into 30 years, it turns into 40 years, it turns into 50 years, it turns into 60 years, it turns into 70 years. And as we get closer to our death through aging, we become less and less capable of doing the things we could in our youth. Our body becomes more and more fragile. Becomes ill. Think about the suffering of sicknesses that we've had to endure, sicknesses others have to endure that we know we could too. Maybe tomorrow we'll have to. All the different forms of illness. Think about all the different names of illnesses, the different illnesses of every organ we can have. Think about the death that will destroy us. Think about being separated from things that are pleasant. A lot of times because of some of the things mentioned. Death, sickness. Think about meeting with the unpleasant. All the things that are unpleasant we've had to meet with causes so much pain. Think about all the things that we've wanted over the years that we didn't get. And how that created anxiety, sometimes depression. Think about our aggregates that we've been forced into that are the basis of our suffering. It's in dependence upon this body that I suffer, in dependence upon my mind that has the afflictive obstructions and the obstructions to omniscience that I suffer. These appropriated, contaminated aggregates are why I suffer. I have a contaminated mind, contaminated with the afflictive obstructions and obstructions to omniscience. There's no certainty. Those people I care about so much, when I separate from them, who knows if I'll know them again until I'm Buddha. There's no certainty. There's no satiability. No matter what we chase after, it's like salt water when we're thirsty. Disappoints us over and over again. We have to be reborn. Do it all over again with a body and look down at ourselves and say, this is me, and operate within the circumstances that me has at that moment. And I'll think that I'm just as much me if I'm an ant me as I am a me now, Jeff. And then that body will be shucked off like all of the other ones. That body that I cling to, even though it's an ant or a bug or a bird or a hell being, hungry ghost animal, any among the 6 realms of cyclic existence type beings, I'll cling to it and I'll have to shuck it off, just like I'll have to shuck this body off that I have here. When I die, I may have to go to the lower realms of cyclic existence, where day and night I experience pain more than any pain I've experienced infrequently in this life. It'll just be suffering. And then I'll get a reprieve, and that'll be my bait to make me do nothing about cyclic existence. And I'll be in a higher realm. I'll think everything's fine. And then I'll be forced into the lower realms again. And throughout that whole process, I'll be alone. Those friends, those solid relationships that I cling to so dearly will end each time I shuck off a body. And I may not see those beings again until I'm Buddha. So we see how this is the suffering the suffering of change, that bait, that happiness we think is suffering, that baits us into cyclic existence over and over and over again, that contaminated happiness, and that pervasive compounded suffering that throws us over and over and over again into this state we just talked about with the 8 types of suffering and the 6 types of suffering. Be forced by karma and afflictions over and over and over again into that state. The Buddha stated that the suffering had a cause, and that cause was called the origin. So the Buddha stated that this is the truth of suffering, the superior truth of suffering, a truth that superior beings had realized about the nature of reality. This is a superior truth of suffering. And then the Buddha stated that this is the superior truth of origin. And the Buddha stated that it was ignorance that caused our afflictions and karma to give rise to cyclic existence, contaminated karma. And then the Buddha stated that suffering could end. After he showed us how we were bound to cyclic existence, the Buddha started to talk about being free from that binding, being free from the prison of cyclic existence, how to be unbound. The Buddha said we could be free. The Buddha stated that this is the superior truth of cessation. You can be free. You can be free of suffering altogether. You can be free of that fear you have of the 8 types of suffering, 6 types of suffering, and 3 types of suffering. Fear meaning you really don't want to have them. You're afraid, I don't want to have them. You can get rid of all of that fear because you don't have to have them. And you can be free. And the Buddha stated that I know this to be true because I am. And this is how. And this is how a superior being sees reality. And this is how you should mature your mind into seeing things as well. So then we feel a sense of confidence. We think about the teachings shared in common with beings of small capacity and all of the contents of those teachings. We should be able to just readily bring them to our mind after all of these years. We think about the teachings just primarily just mentioned on the Four Noble Truths, the teachings shared in common with beings of medium capacity, and make sure we've left nothing out. And now we should have a desire to want to emerge from cyclic existence, not a silly desire, one that's based on the reality that we can. We can definitely get out of cyclic existence, 100%. There's a cause of it, the cause is impermanent, and there's a way to abandon the cause. So we can definitely get out of cyclic existence. We can get away from all of our fears. So we have this desire to definitely emerge called renunciation. Imagine that we day and night at this very moment only think about getting out of cyclic existence. May I get out of cyclic existence. May I get rid of the origin of cyclic existence. Thinking that over and over and over again. I will get out of cyclic existence. I will practice the path. I must get out. I don't want the 8 sufferings. I don't want the 6 sufferings. I don't want the 3 sufferings. I must get out. And once that's really firm in your mind, strong, solid as a rock, then start to think about other beings, those who are close to you, and think how they too have all of those sufferings we just mentioned. And the only way for them to be free is by relying on the path that you were just presented. You start to think about those beings you love so much and how much they have to suffer. And maybe they don't know about any of this. Maybe they have no idea how to end their suffering. They're just going to circle over and over and over again, just as you have before. But just this once, you know something different. So you've caught the lightning in the bottle. Just this once, you understand it. But they don't necessarily. You start to move it out and think about those people who you consider strangers, those bees that fly by, the birds, other people's dogs, people in the supermarket, worms. Imagine beings that we read about that exist in the hell and hungry ghost realms, nagas, all those beings who are neutral to us, as gods, as demigods. And think about the predicament that they're in, and that all of those beings have been your mother, have been your brother, have been your sister, have been the kindest type of being to you that exists. And then we think about our enemies that we mislabel. One circumstance or another happens, or one thing we don't like, or we hear something that's different from what we believe, and we consider that being an enemy. We don't recognize that they were kind to us as every other being has been in previous times, so we've just forgotten about it. We don't remember that they're under the sway of karma and afflictions, and they're out of control in front of us. And they're suffering so much because we know, when somebody's angry or when somebody's responding in a negative way, it feels badly. We know they're suffering so much, and we're creating it because we have the karma for them to be an enemy to us. And usually an enemy comes because they say things we don't like or they yell at us, right? So we're hearing those things that we don't like because of our karma, and we're blaming them. We're blaming those kind beings that we forgot were so kind to us because of a small misstep that they've made, some small misstep. Since beginningless time, they may have done so many great things for us. They have one small misstep. Now we label them incorrectly. We think about those beings and start to generate the wish, may they have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. I want to be the cause for their happiness. I want to be the cause that they're free from suffering. And then based on all of this confidence that we have and this understanding that we know there's an answer, we then decide we're going to take on this task to free all sentient beings. And very quickly we realize we can't. We're still suffering. We haven't freed ourselves from suffering. We don't have infinite happiness to give. The being that we take refuge in is the being that we need to become to help sentient beings. If it's necessary for all sentient beings to practice what the Buddha has taught, and it's necessary for all sentient beings to engage in a path of method and wisdom, then it's necessary to have a teacher who is a perfect teacher, a reliable teacher, to show all sentient beings how to do that. And I'm not that reliable teacher. Only the Buddha is. And the quicker I become a Buddha, the quicker I'm free from suffering and have infinite happiness. So if we're looking at intelligent selfishness, becoming a Buddha is the best way to be free from suffering and have infinite happiness, the only way to have infinite happiness. So we recognize also, though, that the only way that we'll be reliable, the only way that we can truly help all sentient beings is to become a Buddha. So we recognize for ourselves and others that we must become a Buddha. And then we say, may I become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. And we arrive at that beautiful mind of bodhicitta that's brought about by thinking about all of these things over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, by recognizing that we must become a Buddha in order to fulfill all of our needs and all sentient beings' needs. And then we arrive at that conclusion that I must become a Buddha for the sake of sentient beings. And we recognize that sentient beings, we rely on sentient beings in order for our Buddhahood to occur. So let us hold in our mind this thought, may I become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. So we start to set our motivation right from there. Why am I here tonight? To become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. Why am I going to recite the Heart Sutra? To become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. Why am I going to try to understand the explicit and implicit meaning of the Heart Sutra? To become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. Why am I making a mandala offering to all the holy gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas of the lineage? Why am I making this offering of the most pure environment to become a Buddha for the sake of sentient beings? Why am I going for refuge? It's right in the refuge prayer to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. So it's very important for us to keep reassuring ourselves and reminding ourselves that that's why we are here. Even if it's unnatural, even if we feel that we're faking it, it will eventually become part of us, and it will be something that we transform into through this familiarization. Don't look at it like we're almost faking something. We're just familiarizing our something with something that's very real, so it can become real for us. So that's an important way to look at it. Yeah, so let's now visualize all the gurus and Buddhas and Bodhisattvas in the space in front of us. Imagine Kensur Geshe Wandak, all the holy beings, Dalai Lama, Geshe Lobsang Gompo, Geshe Dorje Damdu, Geshe Aga, Geshe Tenzin Ladrinla, Demolocho Rinpoche, just any holy beings that you have in your mind, superior beings, holy beings that you can place in the space in front of you, Buddha Shakyamuni and Manjushri and Vajrapani and all of those holy beings, any tantric deities that you rely upon, imagine them there and imagine them just so happy. Imagine Kensur Geshe Wandak and His Holiness the Dalai Lama so happy in the space in front of us, so happy that we're engaging in virtuous practices. So we imagine them there, so happy. Now we imagine that all around us, slowly, maybe however you want to visualize it, filing in, or that you're emanating arms to every sentient being and grabbing them and by the hand and bringing them to the teaching. Imagine however you would like that sentient beings are assembled here at your calling and that you're leading them. Imagine that all sentient beings, all hell beings, hungry ghost, animal, human, demigod, God, all these different types of beings are all around you without any bias. Have them all around. And imagine that now the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, Kensur Geshe Wandak, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, they become ecstatic because they see that all sentient beings have arrived. And their only purpose is for sentient beings to be free from suffering and to achieve infinite happiness. That's all they work for day and night, is to try to make that happen. And they see that all sentient beings have assembled here and are trying to engage in the pathway that will make that happen. And the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and Gurus all know that the only way that we and all sentient beings can become enlightened is by taking it upon ourselves, the task, and engaging in the practice ourselves. No one can do it for us. So the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas know they can't wash away our negativities with water. They know they can't take away our suffering with their hands. They know that they can't give us their realizations. They know that they can only teach us the truth of reality, and then sentient beings can be free from practicing that. So they're so happy that that's what's going on. We're about to read the Heart Sutra that deals with the entire implicit and explicit path, the emptiness of the five paths and the five paths. So the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are very happy that we're reading that. Very happy that we're engaging in this Dharma practice we're about to. Kensur Geshe Wandak is so happy the teachings are continuing. His Holiness is so happy the teachings are continuing, as he asked his Kensur Geshe Wandak to keep the teachings continuing and teaching the Lam Rim. His Holiness the Dalai Lama is so happy that the lineage that Kensur Geshe Wandak passed down is continuing in, and it doesn't need to just have some new lineage come in, that we have the lineage of Kensur Geshe Wandak, and that all of us here are students of him and have that lineage, and then have the ability to help sentient beings and explain that lineage. And we shouldn't think like, oh, we can't do that, we don't know enough. We shouldn't, if we can help sentient beings with the Dharma, we are students of Kensur Geshe Wandak. Just make sure that what you say is what we said earlier. It came from Kensur Geshe Wandak, which is a pure teaching that came from all the Tibetan masters, Indian Pandits, and Buddha Shakyamuni. So it's really just imagine that now all the Buddhas, Gurus, and Bodhisattvas are so happy. You've led all sentient beings here. You have the confidence that you can help them, that you can give them advice, that what you're thinking can enter their minds and help their minds, and that what you're reciting they're reciting. and that they're thinking about it, etc. So with this visualization, hold it very, very well. All the gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas, all so joyful, all sentient beings all around you. Now imagine yourself and all sentient beings have a white Om at your crown, a red Ah at your throat, and a blue Hum at your heart area. Imagine that all sentient beings have this. Now imagine that from this, the kind of climax of the observation of what's going on for the gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas, the fact that we're just about to start to now engage in prayer and do a teaching, bliss just radiates from them in the form of light rays and nectars. And we imagine they're coming out in the form of white. And then those white light rays and nectars are transforming into syllable ohms and going into the Om at our crown and purifying our body. And we imagine red light rays and nectars from this bliss are coming down, raining on us from all the gurus and Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, and raining red ahs and purifying our speech and all sentient beings' speech. And then again, from this bliss that the gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas all have, from this happiness that they're seeing us engage in this virtuous practice, we imagine that blue light rays come down and nectars come down and transform into blue hums and go into our home at our heart, at our chest. And we imagine then that our mind is purified, and all sentient beings' mind is purified through this blessing, through this enlightened activity process that the gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas are spontaneously doing because of this bliss that they have, this union of bliss and emptiness. This bliss that they have is just showering us with all of these light rays and nectar. So imagine this, hold this visualization, and we'll begin with the Heart Sutra. The Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge. Thus have I heard, once the Blessed One was dwelling in Rajagriha at Vulture Peak Mountain, together with a great gathering of the Sangha of monks and a great gathering of the Sangha of Bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One entered the Samadhi that expresses the Dharma called profound illumination. At the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, while practicing the profound Prajnaparamita, saw in this way. He saw the five skandhas to be empty of nature. Then, through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should a son or daughter of noble family train who wishes to practice the profound Prajnaparamita? Addressed in this way, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, said to Venerable Shariputra, O Shariputra, son or daughter of noble family who wishes to practice the profound Prajnaparamita should see in this way, seeing the five skandhas to be empty of nature. Form is emptiness, emptiness also is form, emptiness is no other than form, form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, perception, formation, and consciousness are emptiness. Thus, Shariputra, all dharmas are emptiness. There are no characteristics. There is no birth and no cessation. There is no impurity and no purity. There is no decrease and no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no perception, no formation, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no dharmas, no eye dhatu, up to no mind dhatu, no dhatu of dharmas, no mind conscious dhatu, no ignorance, no end of ignorance, up to no old age and death, no end of old age and death, no suffering, no origin of suffering, no cessation of suffering, no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since the Bodhisattvas have no attainment, they abide by means of Prajnaparamita. Since there is no obscuration of mind, there is no fear. They transcend falsity and attain complete nirvana. All the Buddhas of the three times by means of Prajnaparamita fully awaken to unsurpassable, true, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the great mantra of Prajnaparamita, the mantra of great insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequaled mantra, the mantra that calms all suffering should be known as truth, since there is no deception. The Prajnaparamita mantra is said in this way. So we're going to do it a little differently. Deyata om gate gate bharagate bharazam gade bodhisahadyada om gate gate Bharagade, Bharazamgade Bodhiswadhyada, Om Gade Gade, Bharagade, Bharazamgade Bodhiswadhyada. Thus Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound Prajnaparamita. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and praised noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, Good, good, O son of noble family, thus it is, O son of noble family, thus it is. One should practice the profound Prajnaparamita, just as you have taught, and all the Tathagatas will rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, Venerable Shariputra and noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, that whole assembly in the world with its gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One. Gala jube ne jodan pa ne nguje du ju nga yi du do jen durba bola ma yi bu jin zi ne zong an ro zo la ja ze lo ra zamara da janda ra zamara ebe. Aga samara de janara samara me de ada onga de gate paragate parasangati buddhi so baba ganjo sanji gai de vejo ji she kabadaji me bajo ji shabadaji ragi bajo me de vejo danji she dingo ye so ageri ndo na je je wada me de ne vejo dan je wada somba jo ji bon zon zon jo ji da ji de jan den da de le jo. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun, and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. Holy Lamas high, wrap the sky of your Dharma bodies in massive clouds of knowledge and love, and let them pour upon the earth of your disciples as we are ready a shower of rain, the teachings deep and wide. Zai mo I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. Idam Guru Rana Mandala Gamniradayami. Sanye Jananda Ye Janala Janjo Badu Danye Jazuji Dagi Jiji Jibe Sananji Drala Benji Sanje Jobarsho. Sanye Jananda Ye Janala Janjo Badu Danye Jazuji Dagi Jiji Jibe Sananji Drala Benji Sanje Jobarsho. Sanye janan ye janan la janju badu danye jazuji dagi juje jibe zananji trula benji zanye jubajo. May this teaching be heard and understood in the language of all sentient beings. Okay. Thank you again, everyone, for coming and allowing for this wondrous event to happen every Thursday. Now we're talking about Bodhicitta and talking about it in a very, very in-depth fashion. So I really appreciate everyone's patience and listening so well. And just do know that by listening to this, and if you've already heard it a million times, hearing it again, it really, really just plants this certainty within our mind, this surety within our mind that makes it more natural for us to engage in effort and engage in what will be the only thing that allows us to become Buddhas, and that's the Bodhisattva path of the 10 perfections and so forth. So here tonight, we're learning how to become that being who can truly engage, right, in that Bodhisattva path to work for theirs and sentient beings' needs to achieve that final aim of Buddhahood, where there is no higher place than perfection. So we call them, practicing the 6 perfections, because eventually they become resultant perfection. The Buddha, who has all of those perfections that we talk about of generosity, ethics, and patience, and effort, and concentration, and wisdom, and so forth. The Buddha has perfected those things, driven by wisdom. And it are those perfections, the first 5, that create the form body of the Buddha, and that wisdom perfection that creates the truth body. And if we look at how we explained that before, we just went over it in class again. And I was so happy to see that the Nalanda course, when they go over Buddha bodies, is the identical course that we went over. So rest assured and have confidence that the material that we're learning is a material that generally all scholars would agree upon in terms of the Buddha bodies. And we know that, by engaging in those first 5 perfections, we create the form body, and by engaging in that wisdom perfection, we are able to achieve the truth body, the Dharmakaya. And that truth body breaks down into the natural truth body, as we learned, and the exalted wisdom body. So the attributes of the Buddha's mind, right? The natural truth body, those attributes of the natural cessation, right? Or the emptiness of Buddha's mind, the cessation of those stains, the adventitious defilements, being created by wisdom. So that form, that side of the body of the natural truth body, natural Dharmakaya. And then the other side being that wisdom body, which is the Buddha's omniscience, the Buddha's consciousness. And that gets created by the wisdom. And then from that Dharmakaya, from that omniscient consciousness, comes the form bodies of the Buddha that are created by the first 5 perfections of generosity, ethics, patience, concentration, effort, and concentration. And so those are the enjoyment bodies that the Buddha gets to emanate and teach the Arya Bodhisattvas in the Pure Land, right? And teach them only the Mahayana doctrine, the 5 qualities that we learned about, that show, where the qualities that that are necessarily so if there's a truth body, pertaining to the body of the being. It has all the marks and so forth, and that the students are Arya Bodhisattvas, and that stays there. It doesn't die like normal emanation bodies. This emanation body in the Sambhogakaya and the enjoyment body form actually abides until all sentient beings are free in this very special Pure Land. So it's always there, just abiding there, helping Arya Bodhisattvas until all sentient beings are free from suffering. And they're only teaching the Mahayana doctrine in this very special place and so forth. So you can look at those 5 qualities if I missed any, but they're always specific to the enjoyment body. And then the emanation body is the body that emanates like Buddha Shakyamuni or Maitreya emanating in Tushita heaven. These are all forms of emanation body that are occurring, or if you considered your Lama a Buddha, That's just emanating, we say. That's the emanation body. That isn't the enjoyment body. It's under the form body category, and that would have been created by the first 5 perfections, the method side of the path. So when we look at path, we need a union of method and wisdom. Method creates the form body, wisdom creates the truth body. So we have very, very specific causes for everything that occurs. And all of these things occur through this process of understanding the teaching shared in common with beings of small capacity, then understanding the teaching shared in common with beings of medium capacity and developing renunciation once you get there, and then practicing this desire to become a Buddha because you want to definitely emerge. And then you look at everyone else around you and you get your meditation right. You right yourself with everyone that exists. You realize they're as important as you are, and then you make them more important than you are, which we'll see coming up in these teachings. So we're looking at Panchen Sonandrapa's general meaning of perfection. I'll go on for maybe 10 or 15 more minutes, and then we'll end. So we know what the outline looks like by now. We know that first we have the basis, then we have causes, then we have nature, then we have divisions, then we have benefits. And we're in the causes section, specific root causes section, specifically the specific root cause of bodhicitta called equalizing and exchanging self with others, passed down from the profound view lineage from Buddha Shakyamuni to Maitreya to Nagarjuna, to eventually end up at Salimpa and Drontompa and Geshe Potawa and Sharawa and Chakawa, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we learned a little bit about the lineage. And I just want to clarify, I think I may have misspoken. And, over the years, this has been, I've heard it gets mixed up. And I think I may have done so. The text is Nagarjuna's Precious Garland, where we find the main kind of origin in Nagarjuna's teachings and other teachings. We find a lot of it in terms of this, giving and taking, this Tonglen practice of giving others all of your goodness and taking on all of their suffering. We find this in Nagarjuna's Precious Garland. And I believe I actually said it was in the Letter to a Friend. And they're very easy to confuse because it's called Precious Garland is called Letter to a King. So letters in it. And the other is called so Precious Garland is called Letter to a Friend. And the other text is called Letter to a King. I'm sorry, see, I just did it. I just confused it. Precious Garland is advice for a king. Letter to a King, sometimes it's called. And the other is called Letter to a Friend, both written by Nagarjuna, both wonderful texts, but the Precious Garland, Advice for a King, is where we find the quote that says, may their evil bear fruit on me, may all my virtue bear fruit for others. And then we find also in so many of the sutras and so forth, and Lankavatara Sutra, and so forth, we find this idea of taking suffering and giving happiness to others. So we went over an outline. We got into a basic understanding of how we would describe these teachings on equalizing and exchanging self with others, that we would say trace back to Shakyamuni Buddha. And we'd say that there are 9 steps, 8 steps, 1 result, which is 9. Equalizing self and others is the first step. Second, reflecting on the demerits of cherishing oneself. Third, reflecting on the merits of cherishing others. Fourth, taking the suffering of others with great compassion. 5, giving your happiness to others with wishing them love. 6 is the actual exchange of self and others. 7, a special recollection of kindness of others, altruism or extraordinary attitude. And then bodhicitta. So we went over how we equalizing self and others, how we could see how you are as important as I am. We could establish that you want happiness, I want happiness. You have Buddha nature, I want Buddha nature. You're empty, I'm empty. Some of these are some of the examples. There's many more that you can use, but we use those. Number 2, reflecting on the demerits of cherishing oneself. We see that all the negativities in Shanti Deva's text, we see that all the evils and sufferings of the world come from cherishing oneself, and all the happinesses and so forth come in the world come from me cherishing others, right? So we start to recognize this. We start to analyze, is this true? Are there downfalls? Oh, by cherishing myself, do I get jealous? Do I get angry? Do I become attached to things? Do I become obsessed with things? Do those feelings feel good? Does that come from cherishing others or cherishing myself? So we start to look at the downfalls of the self-cherishing attitude, how it makes us, weapon up against others. And then, when things don't go our way, when we don't get the profit or the gain that we're hoping to from, weaponing up against other sentient beings, we then blame them for feeling so badly. It's all their fault. And we don't blame the real thing that is to blame. It says, banish the one to blame for everything. And it's this, first of all, this grasping at the I as being truly established that then makes me go, oh, I'm me and I'm more important than you because you're over there and I'm over here. This kind of misapprehension of the aggregates and so forth that takes place when I go, I mine, me, I'm more important than you. So we see that then from that emotional state, we become jealous, we become angry, become attached, we have anxiety, we are impatient when we're waiting for something we want. It's not coming to us soon enough. We become impatient. That feeling of anxiety and impatience within our mind is from the self-cherishing attitude. So we start to look at, this is the one to blame for everything. This is the one that really is the problem for us. And we say, since beginningless time, we've been circling in cyclic existence, and that no negativity is greater than anger, according to the great masters, according to Shantideva. Nothing's greater than love in terms of virtue, and nothing's greater than anger in terms of non-virtue. Why do we get angry? When we get angry, we feel terrible, and we're angry because we're cherishing ourselves. We have some sort of cherishing going on, something opposing our cherishing, not getting what we want, being separated from the pleasant, etc. And we become angry. We needn't look further than what we meditated on, the truth of sufferings, when we look at to find our self-cherishing attitude and how it disrupts us. So we have to understand that these preliminary practices are indispensable. It's why Nanka Pell in the Mind Training Like the Rays of the Sun says, now that you have renunciation as a result of the small and medium scopes, those teachings that are shared in common, now let's get into bodhicitta. With this mind of renunciation, now let's get into bodhicitta. So you really have analyzed these things that are suffering, these mental states that are suffering, these occurrences that they are suffering, and then you take these 8 sufferings, 6 sufferings, and so forth, and you start to look at how the self-cherishing attitude has either just directly created it, or as a result of the self-cherishing attitude, we've had to, suffer over born again and again and again, the suffering of birth because of the self-cherishing attitude, the suffering of aging because of our self-cherishing attitude, etc. So we can analyze the different types of suffering and relate them to the self-cherishing attitude and how that self-cherishing attitude has created all those forms of suffering. And in a very logical way, personal to us. The thing about bodhicitta meditation is you use things that are personal to you to enhance it. You're not trying to, emptiness, you're using very specific things. You're not creating any formulas. You're not creating any kind of new dialogue until you have it memorized, right? Until you know it, then you can start to question it. With bodhicitta, you can start to use right away. You use this outline and you plug in your life and experiences, and it enhances it, makes it more real. If it's not your own experience, and if you can't see a time in your life where because you were so cherishing yourself, you suffered unnecessarily, then you probably aren't looking very close enough or being honest. And then that requires you to be more self-aware then. If you think your whole life you've never, because you've cherished yourself more than others, experienced suffering upon clean analysis. So you do that about the cherishing yourself, the downfalls. Then you get to the benefits of cherishing others, and I'll end in a few minutes. We see in our daily lives examples, and in history, beings who have cherished others, right? Examples of them, and how others reacted to them, right? And how happy they seemed to be, even in the face of adversity at times. Take Khyentse Geshe Wandak. Clearly, it was just about everyone else for him, just cherishing others, trying to ripen sentient beings, trying to make a numbskull like me somehow like have my mind, have these teachings penetrate this very, very, rough mind, and day and night, he thought about doing that for all beings, right? And we saw how happy he was and how he could just, in the face of adversity, handle anything. We see these great lamas who lost their country when Tibet was invaded in 59. And we see their reactions. We see now their state of peace. We see how they've been able to handle it, how they were able to transform it into helping the world with Tibetan Buddhism. How they didn't just give up. These great beings had this cherishing others attitude. So they were forced to keep studying, and keep giving teachings, because they knew that they needed to cherish others. And look what rose out of it. The Dharma came to us because these beings cherished others so much that they continued to want to help us. And they thought about this so much. And then we can see these beings that I witnessed, in that generation, Rinpoche's generation, the younger generation too, but that it really experienced that very, very difficult refugee status. You see them, and there's just a sense of peace about them that others don't have. And it's because of this love and compassion and cherishing others that they have. Look at His Holiness the Dalai Lama. He's like a magnet. He's like I say sometimes, he's walking through, when you see him coming into the temple now, they have like the video of him walking in. And you have all the security around him and even like machine guns, like Indian Army. And that's how much they need to protect him. That's how unsafe things are, right? That there's guards all around him with, and when he comes here, Secret Service all around him. And so his life is in danger, right? All these people are around him because his life's in danger. And he just can't wait to run up to strangers. He just can't wait. Like it's like his sole mission is to find a hole. Like he's a running back to find a hole through security to get to a group to grab their kata. You can even see him sometimes grab it out of His Holiness's hand. And then you'll see him like sanitize his hand really quick. And he just won't even be thinking about anything about himself. You'll see it. You'll see everyone around him so worried that he's going to be shot or that something's going to happen. And terrible things have happened there. I mean, let's not say there's no danger. Terrible things have happened in that very compound. So it's very possible that something terrible could happen there. But His Holiness is just kind of like, we're oblivious to others. His Holiness, because he cherishes others more than himself, is oblivious to himself. And you see it. So how do others react to that? How does it feel for others to see someone who cherishes others? It's like it takes your breath away. It's like you're seeing something you've never seen before. You are seeing something you only witness in like quick frames in a whole lifetime. And it's so clearly different. And it's because of that self-cherishing attitude has been stomped on. And that being's oblivious to their needs and is just thinking about your needs. I'm oblivious to your needs. But the Dalai Lama is oblivious to his needs and only thinking about your needs. And therefore, millions of people would love to sit and have tea with him. Millions of people would just love just that opportunity. You see people like he's, Elvis, he doesn't sing or do a dance. He's talking about philosophical things. He's not talking about interesting, fun things to the masses. I mean, just put this out there and start talking about what we're talking about tonight. Most people turn it off. But all these people, he's able to just talk about this intricate stuff, and they'll sit there for hours in the worst weather, just ordinary folk, maybe even not a full education because they just want to be near a being like that. Why? Because he has developed this love and compassion. He cherishes others. There's just nothing more needs to be said. We look at the great Bodhisattva, Tome Zampo, who wrote the 37 Practices of Bodhisattva. He used to travel with a pet fox, wild fox. And we hear stories of bodhisattvas that lived, out in the wilderness, and all the wild animals were so calm and tame all around them. the lions and everybody, all the animals got along, and deers would sit next to lions, and things like this would occur because of this peace, that was radiated from these great bodhisattvas. And then you hear the story from the great bodhisattva Tomezampo, who he went everywhere with a wild fox, and the wild fox was totally tame, but not tamed by training, tamed by his presence. And we see that black and white picture of Kensur Geshe Wandak, I mean, with the 4 pit bulls just laying at his feet, just so calm and serene. He could create that environment. And so you just know, right? It's kind of like when you get in a room with a holy being, you just know. When a dog's in a room with someone who loves dogs, they just know. I see it. Like they start like 5 feet away with a different affect. But somebody who's not so great with them, they don't have that same affect. They bark more. They bark, like more of them bark. Very interesting. Same thing. Even a dog can tell when somebody likes it. Right? It's that simple, right? It's that simple. The dog knows that this person's just going to be like this when it comes to it. Imagine if all sentient beings, when they saw us, were like the dog that knows people who love dogs. Imagine if all sentient beings saw us coming and they were like, oh my, there's that kind of person. That's what we would be if we would start to get rid of this attitude that's so disgusting. This attitude that it says is this naked, empty-handed, overindulgent being that's in us. And why is it empty-handed? It never brought us anything. If you could put suffering in its hand and just say this, this naked, overindulgent being with only suffering to offer in its hand, you could say that, but really nothing to offer us of value. I think that we'll end there and do some prayers. I just want to emphasize that I think it's so important that we continuously do this meditation on basically the entire Lam Rim each time, because it allows us to know that at least once or twice a week, we're doing a glance meditation on the path that has all of the kind of features in it. And then we can go get, into the specific areas of the path. And now we're in Bodhicitta. So there's so much pre-assumption there about the previous stages of the path that I just can't emphasize enough. And I can't emphasize enough how once you're really able to see, the suffering for what it is, you'll be able to see the Buddha nature there with it, and the ability for that proliferating Buddha nature, which is the Buddha nature that our mind can get better and better and better. Our mind can learn. Our proliferating Buddha nature can start to, first of all, understand these sufferings and why they're occurring so we can react more realistically. Understand their nature, we can react more realistically, and understand that by understanding their nature, that understanding is what we eventually becomes that truth, that Dharmakaya, understanding that nature, of everything that, we're understanding at a conventional level too, in terms of path, and how those two work together, and how all phenomena have conventional and ultimate reality and work with one another. So our practices of the method unite with the wisdom, and we eventually, our emptiness of our mind and the clear light become in one, right? So the subjective observer and the observation of emptiness become of one taste and one emptiness. The subjective emptiness and the becomes of one taste with its object, which is itself, basically. That's another story. But the emptiness of itself, the subjective emptiness of the subjective emptiness. So Yeah, let's do the concluding prayers. Does anybody have any questions before we do that? No? Okay. Concluding mandala offering and dedication prayer. Once again, imagine all the gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas in the space in front of you. Same visualization. With the Om Ahom, if you can do it. I won't do the visualization again, but the same visualization, all the gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas. Also happy, full of bliss. Happy we're making an offering of a pure land because this will get us closer to Buddhahood. We're offering such a large thing. If we can make our mind that large, that's how big the virtue is we're getting. So the bigger we can make our mind and the bigger motivation we have and the more real it is, that's the more solid the virtue is. Whilst understanding its dependent origination, that it's empty, it's merely through the power of imputation of our mind. It's parts of a collection that have been imputed that don't have any nature from their own side. And all of this is going on is that nature, seal it with emptiness, but understand that this is the conventional path, if that makes sense. So then we unite method and wisdom. Fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers. I apologize. All sentient beings are all around us. Hell, hungry ghost, animal, human, demigods, gods all around us. We've led them here. We're leading them. And we're all making this mandala offering and with all of the visualizations that you can do, as mentioned before. Fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun, and the moon. I imagine this is a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure land. I dedicate whatever virtues I've collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Losandrapa to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri and likewise Samantabhadra as well. With whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors to traverse the three times, I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. In that pure land surrounded by snowy mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness, all powerful Avalokiteshvara, Tenzin Gyatso, may you stay until samsara's end. I pray that we may in all of our lives never be separated from Khenso Geshe Wandak in whatever emanation he or she chooses to show us. Whether it's the emanation body that we just spoke of in our world that we can relate to, or it's the enjoyment body in the pure land once we're Arya Bodhisattvas that we can relate to. May we never be separated until we achieve the enlightenment, which was Rinpoche's goal for us, of a Buddha, and then we can aid Rinpoche in his quest to free all sentient beings from suffering as well. That haven't been, unless I'm the last one, could be. I may be the last one. You may all be Buddhas already, but just in case there's any left, I want to help Rinpoche, save them when I become a Buddha, in case there's any left. So I hope that you can use these meditations on suffering that all of the Kadampa masters would say, and Buddha Shakyamuni at the first turning of the wheel of Dharma would say, are what cause us to have effort later, what cause us to believe in it, what cause us to get up in the morning and do it, and then tomorrow do it, and then the next day do it. If we keep this kind of Four Noble Truths meditation right there in front of us every single day, that motivates us to keep going. We can meditate on compassion all day and night in the Tonglen we're going to talk about, but if we aren't really, really motivated to get out and don't understand what we're getting out of, we'll just burn out, or it'll be a year, it'll be 2 weeks, or a practice will last. It's all too common. Make this part of your life, taste the Dharma, make your life reinforce your belief in the Dharma, make your life prove the Dharma to you. And I think that that's the best advice anybody can give, because if it's just in books, then it's just some intellectual understanding that has no effect on you. We've all seen this, seen people studying 20, 30, 40 years, and they're like the same. 25 years, they're still so angry and talking and just, they know all these divisions and stuff though. It's because they haven't tasted it. It hasn't, it's like, I'm going to end with this. I don't want to forget it. Geshe Aga said to me, it's like somebody who's homeless, who's standing in the market saying, everybody should have an airplane. Everybody should definitely have a car. You should have a house, and you should fill that house with lots of furniture. And the person who's telling the story is a poor beggar that doesn't know anything about airplanes, houses, or they're just no words. And they're just saying, everyone should have an airplane. Everyone should have a house. And this person knows nothing of what they're saying. They're just saying words because they have no experience with an airplane. They have no experience of living in a house. They have no experience with furnishing a house. So we really got to put this into our daily lives and taste it. So we have the teeth to chew the Dharma, as the Dalai Lama always says. Thank you.